a video about this cheap plonk that I bought for some another experiment. I made a white wine sauce, and it's got some faffing around. I'm just going to use the cheap stuff. So yeah, in the UK we call cheap wine plonk. I don't know why. I'll have to look into that, but it always kind of makes it hard. So it's left over. I'm not going to drink it. I'm not a huge fan of wine. I do drink wine, but I'm not a huge fan of it. And I kind of thought instead of just put it in a sauce or put it in some making dessert out of it, or sticking it in some soup or something like that, I had this idea that I've made some cordials out of rose water and orange blossom water recently, and I kind of thought, couldn't we actually turn wine into a cordial? So reduce it, which will get rid of the alcohol, and then it will concentrate the flavour. It's about 340 millilitres there. Reduce that down, and then add some sugar to it. And what will it taste like? I mean, it will go. So what is it? The dry and citrusy. So it will be quite a dry, and it'll be quite sharp, quite acidic. But the sugar will compensate for that, and we might just be able to make a cordial, like a wine flavoured cordial. Maybe this will work, maybe it won't. Although on a side note, when I worked in quite a fancy restaurant, well, it wouldn't be considered fancy now, but it was at the time, like 25 years ago. We used to make red wine sauce, and what we do is to just before we served the red wine sauce on whatever meat it was going on, just to give it a bit of an extra kick, we'd have a reduction of red wine that we just add a little bit of that, just a few drops to the red wine sauce, to a portion of red wine sauce, and it'd just lift the kind of flavour a little bit. Because what you do is, when you're making sauces and you're reducing things, you're cooking them for a long time, and cooking things tends to make them taste a bit stewed. So you can freshen up a sauce by adding things like lemon juice, a little bit of reduced red wine if it's a red wine sauce, a little bit of reduced white wine if it's a white wine sauce, just to kind of lift that kind of flavour. So we always had a little bit of reduction of red wine in our mise en place, and what would happen was that if you left it a little bit too long, so if you made too much of it, crystals would form in the bottom of the reduction. If it was exposed to the air as well, these crystals would kind of form. And I was reminded of this because of this, and of the grape jelly that I've made. Oh, I'll pause. Hang on. I don't think we'll be able to find any, but there's started to be. So this will be about 3 months old now, 3 or 4 months old, 3 months old, and it's started to get a few crystals in it as this grape jelly. And I think that's because. No, I can't taste any of that. But I think it's because of the grapes. Well, that's the only thing I can think of. It's red grapes, and the same thing happened to red wine. It started forming crystals. I don't know what those crystals are, but anyway, probably just crystals, wine crystals or vinegar crystals. But anyway, that's completely off subject, and this is why my videos are far too long as it is. I should be doing TikToks of 30 seconds, shouldn't I? Or reels of 30 seconds. Maybe not. Oh, the YouTube do shorts as well, but I'm not really kind of quite interested in that. And you shouldn't do things you're not interested in just for likes and views and all that kind of stuff. That's probably why I don't get views either. So we'll reduce that. We'll give it a taste. In fact, it'll burn. What percentage alcohol is it? So it's 10%. So it's quite a weak wine anyway. So probably the wine will have burnt off already. It's kind of quite acidic. It might just taste like a gastric reduction when we're done. So what you do is, to make a gastric reduction, it's vinegar and sugar, and then you add it to things like tomato sauce to kind of lift that kind of flavour. So if you like a Heinz tin tomato sauce, basically just used to be tomatoes in gastric reduction, and you can taste it in an old style classic tomato soup. I say sauce, I can't remember, in tomato sauce, in tomato soup, and it just kind of lifts the kind of flavour. Like, did I say Heinz tomato soup or Campbell's tomato soup? Anyway, off subject again. So reduce that by about 2/3, maybe down to a quarter of its original, and then we'll weigh it, and then we'll add some sugar, and we'll see what it tastes like. We have taken it down to about 90 millilitres. Well, we're about 380? That's about right, isn't it? So down to a quarter. And then we've got 50 grams worth of just granulated sugar. So we'll add this to here. We'll give it a mix around. It's much better to, if you're making syrups and things, it's much better to heat liquid and then add the sugar. If you put the sugar in the pan and put the liquid on top, what can happen is that a raft of sugar forms at the bottom of the pan, and then that starts to caramelize before it melts with the liquid on top. Because the liquid won't penetrate into the sugar. So how does that taste? That's alright actually. It needs a bit more sugar. Let's put in another 25 grams worth of sugar. That's 26, but we'll see how we go. It certainly doesn't taste like a gastrique. Or gastric reduction. I can't remember which is which. I've heard chefs on TV call them gastriques. I always called them a gastric reduction. That's what I was taught at college. Taught by old school chefs that had worked their way up in the old-fashioned hierarchical kitchens, and we're all properly trained in hotels and restaurants, and we're all very, very, very good. Knew the basics and everything above that, and knew how to do it properly as well. I don't think that's particularly as common these days. Alright, it's lost a bit of punch with that sugar being added. But let's let it go cold. Pour it into something. Let's put it into that and let it go cold. No, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll leave it in the pan, and then we'll cool it down in the pan in some cold water, and then we can do it tonight instead of it stretching on into tomorrow. It's cooled. So it's not a heavy syrup. It's different now it's cold. Let's pour it back into the bottle, and then it'll be easy to pour it into the. Now what we can tell you what we can do. We can rinse out this pan with a little bit of water, and then we're not wasting it, and we'll be able to taste that water. So let's swirl around in the pan, and then we'll pick up any kind of syrup that's in there. Then we might need to add a little bit more of the syrup to it. How does that taste? Do you know, that's rather nice. Let's have a little bit more. So, we'll just use the pan, so I'm trying to cut down on the amount of washing up that I make. Do you know, that's really nice. I mean, it's a waste of wine. Let's be honest. I mean, we're wasting wine, which you shouldn't really kind of do. But that was nice and refreshing. Kind of like a elderflower cordial. Think of it along those type of lines. So like an elderflower, kind of quite cordial, floral, a little bit acidic, not particularly winey, but nice. So let me have a think about this. So I don't know. There must be they used to how did they used to make alcohol? They used to like make cheap rough wine in places like France and Italy, and then they take that wine and turn it into industrial alcohol. So there must have been some kind of residue left over when they had evaporated off the alcohol, because they'd only evaporate, say that the wine was 10%, they'd only heat the wine up enough to get rid of that 10% worth of volume, which was alcohol, and then they'd throw the rest of it away, because once they'd got the alcohol out of it, which was the usual part that they wanted, why would they bother carrying on heating it to evaporate off liquid, which they weren't going to use? So they would just evaporate off or condense off the 10%, and then use that as industrial alcohol for whatever purpose, food grade alcohol. So there must be somewhere where you can actually buy like wine residue, but anyway, that's kind of quite interesting. So we've got, let's think about this from this point of view. So there is apple cider vinegar. I don't know if we could actually make a cordial like that, but there is a cordial of such, like shrubs, like an American vinegar and fruit based drink, like a cordial type of thing. So maybe we could use apple cider vinegar for that. So let's just have a look for apple cider vinegar and see how sharp it is. I don't know how we get rid of some of the acidity. No, that would just be a gastric reduction, wouldn't it? If we were to add sugar to that, and it wouldn't be very pleasant to drink, would it? Let's water it down. It's made me cough. So let's water that down and see what happens. Maybe we might be able to make a weakened, add that to some sugar syrup, and then we wouldn't get the acidity, but we'd get the taste of the apple cider, maybe. But we could do the same. We could do the same with cider. We could make a cider cordial. So instead of using wine, we could use cider, reduce that down, add sugar, and then the same kind of recipe, and make a cider cordial. So we wouldn't have to, but maybe the apple cider vinegar would be cheaper. I'm thinking my way through it, through the video instead of, yeah. Well, maybe yeah. So we might just do that tomorrow. We might just make a sugar syrup, and then add apple cider vinegar to it, and see if we can make a apple cider vinegar cordial. Yeah, I think we'll do that tomorrow, because it's getting a bit late now and I can't bother. I've done enough cooking, and I've certainly done enough washing up for the day. Let's just have a quick faff with this vinegar cordial, out of interest. So 75 millilitres of water, 25 millilitres of apple cider vinegar. So that's about the right kind of acidity that you kind of want, and then 100 grams worth of sugar, probably maybe a little bit too much sugar, but we can always add a little bit more water. So turn it up, melt that. I've got a lid, not the right lid. So we'll just put that on. We'll pause. You don't need to see it boiling. We just need to do it. Right, so it's melted. Tastes all right. Tastes all right. It just tastes like a weak gastric with a little bit of kick to it. So turn off the heat, and then we've got a glass. How are we going to do this? Difficult to pour from pans into things, so let's just take a dessert spoonful of that and then put in some cold water. Give it a bit of a stir. Might need to add a little bit more water. We'll see how that tastes. Do you know, that's not bad. A little bit more. A little bit more. I mean, essentially, we're making like a lemon cordial, but instead of lemon, we're using the acidity of apple cider vinegar instead. So. Do you know, that's alright, is that? That's alright. So if you kind of wanted a sweetened flavoured water with a bit of acidity to it, you know, that would be kind of quite refreshing on a hot day with some ice in that. And you wouldn't know what it was. You'd be like, what's that drink? Tell me more about that. So that's kind of quite interesting. And it's not as nice as the wine cordial, and it won't be as nice as a cider cordial. But I was having a think about. I don't know if I've already said this because I made the video last night and I've slept and I've been out for a walk. So obviously, when you make things like brandy, is brandy made from wine? Yes, yeah, because we used to, in the first kitchen that I worked in, the first head chef was very good at cutting corners and cutting costs. So, and he used to buy, it wasn't brandy, it was something called grape brandy. So it was something that was made from grapes, but it was like 30, 35, 40%. And he'd use it in cooking instead of using brandy in the sauce. So he'd call it brandy, he'd call it a brandy sauce, even though we were using grape brandy, which wasn't proper brandy. So brandy comes from grapes, which I presume, therefore, it comes from wine. So they will ferment grapes, make a wine, and then they will distill that wine to get rid of the alcohol out of it, and then they will take that alcohol, get it to a percentage alcohol-wise that they want, either through more distillation or watering it down, and then they'll put it in barrels and age it, and that will become brandy. Now, what's left is, after you've evaporated off the alcohol, you're left with like the rough wine taste and acidity, which is what I did with the wine cordial. I evaporated off the alcohol and then concentrated it down, and then I added sugar to sweeten it, and then we turned it into a cordial. So potentially, somewhere in France, I presume, what they will do with the leftover from the distillation processes, they will just throw it away, or they'll turn it into something else, which is generally what happens with a lot of things. So a lot of the things that we have are some kind of byproduct, something else. So like Marmite is a byproduct of the brewing industry. So it's like that. So they probably already do something with it, but in my eyes, what they really should be doing is concentrating it down further, adding some sugar, and turning it into a delicious cordial. And then you've got a nice, refreshing summer drink, which isn't. I always have a problem if we ever go out, and I'm older now, so I'm not. As long as I've got good company, I'm not that bothered about drinking when I'm out. As long as the company's good, or we're in a restaurant, then I'm not bothered about alcohol. But the only problem is when you go out to places like the pub or a restaurant, the drinks are always sweet. Like, I don't want to drink water. I want something that's a little bit adult in flavour. So I want something that's savoury and tasty, rather than sweet and just overly sweet and claggy. But anyway, so those are thoughts, me just faffing around. but the wine cordial was really nice, and I really think that a cider cordial would be really nice as well. I don't know. It just seems such a waste to buy either of those things and to turn them into a cordial. So unless I can think of a way of bypassing that, then it's a little bit of a bit of waste of money but fun type of thing. But anyway, a success.